Jacob Hsu currently serves as the CEO of Catalyte. Prior to joining Catalyte, Jacob was CEO at Symbio, a global IT services company. Jacob was also CEO of Trilogica and CEO of Epitome, and he began his career in investment banking. He was selected to be a young global leader by the World Economic Forum and was named as one of the world's top 12 CEOs by Chief Executive magazine. Mary Miller is a Democrat running for mayor of Baltimore, her home of 34 years. In 2010, President Obama appointed Mary to lead our country's recovery from the Great Recession. As the first woman to serve as the Undersecretary for Domestic Finance at the U.S. Treasury Department, Mary oversaw the entire U.S. economy. Mary left the Obama administration determined to help strengthen her hometown and now helps women and people of color to start small businesses and revitalize historically neglected areas of the city. I'm Edwin Warfield, publisher of CityBiz in Warfield. I'm honored today to host an interview between Jacob Hsu, CEO of Catalyte, and mayoral candidate Mary Miller on the impact of the coronavirus.
Well, Mary, when thinking about the city's economic recovery from COVID-19, what do you think our public policy priorities need to be?
I think the first thing we're going to have to think about is just stabilization. We have never in our lifetimes weathered something as difficult, I think, as this moment, because when we turn the lights back on, which is not going to be a quick flip, it's going to be a more gradual process, but I believe we will see 15 to 20% unemployment in the city of Baltimore. I would not be surprised if a third, maybe a quarter of our small businesses have failed. We have about 13,700 small businesses in Baltimore, and most of them can't survive a month or a quarter without some kind of revenue. So I think we should be prepared for a lot of economic damage, and I think that's the first step, is to stabilize and assess the situation in Baltimore. But we also need to make sure we've got a pretty strong safety net in place, because those are really depression-like statistics. And we need to make sure that we have accessed every form of assistance to people who've lost their jobs, to businesses that are failing, to the human needs here. I think that has to be part of the big public policy agenda. But I think the other thing we need to be thinking about as a city is making sure we have tapped and lined up every financial resource possible to help during this time. So, for example, the city has a budget stabilization reserve. It's a rainy day fund. I think it's raining pretty hard, and I think that now is the time that you have to dip into something like that. So we've made some pledges on that to help stem the revenue shortfalls that the city will be facing. But I think we should be more affirmatively using the dollars to do some bridge financing to help some of our small businesses in Baltimore and to help some of our nonprofits get through this period and stay on their feet. I've also talked about the need to really aggressively go after the federal aid that's on the table here. There have been a number of big pieces of legislation, but the city has to ask for these things and has to be prepared to apply for them. So I think that's another big thing that we need to do. And we might use the crisis, this will be my final point here, but I think we could use the crisis as an opportunity to try solving some problems in Baltimore. For example, we know that roughly 40% of households in Baltimore do not have access to the internet. It's called the digital divide. But if going forward jobs are more driven by the need for technology, work from home, if healthcare is more driven by the need for technology with telemedicine, we should use this opportunity to close that divide. That would be a huge step forward in terms of equity in the city, but also a way to drive the economy. The cities that have done this have dramatically increased economic activity by giving more connectivity to their citizens. So those are some of the big public policy objectives I think should be front and center. And I know you've been thinking a lot about this too, Jake, and in the middle of this, you launched something pretty exciting called Retrain America. And I was going to ask you if you could talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's great, Mary. I mean, I completely agree with you that this is, I use this word very carefully, an opportunity right? To be able to actually solve some of these fundamental problems that we as a city and a community have been facing for a very long time. As you know, Catalyte, our core business, has been based on connecting people with aptitude with opportunity. And we've been able to prove that we can take people from all walks of life, literally people who have come from many places, poverty, places where they have, never had sort of some of those opportunities, the pedigree. We've been able to take people regardless of their education, regardless of their prior experience, regardless of their circumstances in life, and we've been able to connect them with opportunities in technology jobs. We've turned them into some of the highest performing engineers in the industry, and that's a pathway that we know works. Right? And this is something that we've fundamentally felt that it's been a failure of imagination of our leaders as a society to actually not do more to close that gap, right? To not do more to provide opportunity for people. And so during the heart of this crisis, we decided to let's amplify this pathways, right? I mean, we figure out one pathway, but we recognize not everybody wants to be an engineer, right? Not everybody wants to be a software developer. And so what we did was we launched a site called retrainamerica.com, which is really around finding partners together, a coalition where we can actually tackle this problem at a much bigger scale. Right, so we're bringing in people who have been impacted, who've lost their jobs through COVID, can now go to this site, retrainamerica.com, and sign up to essentially get delivered resources on retraining and reskilling opportunities. The goal here is not to actually provide people with quote unquote training, right? We're not here to charge any tuitions. In fact, this is an employer-led program. The idea is that we're getting partners, large employers like Care First and Exelon, all the way down to very great startups like Pro Tennis and MindGrub, who've stepped up and said, we are willing to give people a shot, right? We are willing to give people, we're gonna open up those future career opportunities. Those jobs that you probably would have had to go to find people with gold-plated resumes and pedigree in the past, we're gonna give people a shot, and we're not gonna disqualify people because of their backgrounds for those jobs. And what we're doing is we're bringing together a coalition of partners where we can retrain people, to be able to very quickly put them to retraining, reskilling programs to slingshot them from really those jobs of the past into those jobs of the future. So today we have a number of partners, and we're covering a wide variety of jobs from, of course, software engineering and technology, with Catalyte, through to jobs in cybersecurity with partners like Grim, to community healthcare workers. We're really trying to amplify this so we can cover any number of careers, future careers for people. The goal really is to be able to start to activate our community, right? To be able to bring employers from companies to training partners to government on board to really make this a reality, right? And I truly believe that in Baltimore, this is a place where we launched this first in Baltimore. We're launching this first in the state of Maryland, because we think that this is the ideal place to do that. Right? This is a place where community matters, and we've seen very quickly that we've been able to pull together a great coalition of partners to make this a reality.
Wow. I mean, that's exactly the kind of employer that we need in Baltimore. That's you're amplifying the employment opportunities through the work that you're doing. And this is going to be so critical to finding those jobs, creating those jobs, and importantly, just connecting people with those jobs. Because we'll have a big hill to climb here when we come out of this.
That's right. That's right. But I also think, Baltimore is in a unique situation where, because of the sense of community here, we can very rapidly become thought leaders across this country around retraining people for those jobs of the future. You see, a lot of people don't understand the jobs of the future are all those jobs that actually require experiential skills, in the sense that it doesn't really matter where you went to school, right? If you think about in our business of software engineers, I always tell people great software engineers are like great musicians, in the sense that it doesn't really matter where you went to school, right? Like they're like great chefs, right? Who really cares where the chef went to school, right? What really matters, can they cook, right? As a musician, can they play? And you only become a great musician by jamming, by playing, right? So it just takes practice, it takes experience. You got to play different kinds of music, play with different kinds of people, and it just takes experience to do that. The challenge, of course, is that chicken and the egg problem, right? We need employers to step up and say, we're going to give people a shot. We're going to take them into this program, and we're going to rapidly give them the resources so they can actually acquire the skills to be successful in the future.
Wow.
Mary, from your point of view, I mean, given all that you've seen, your history in the city, What kind of relationships do you think are going to be important to build to make this recovery a reality in Baltimore and frankly across the country?
Well, I'll come back to things you were talking about. I think we need to have really strong relationships in place between the public sector and the private sector, because over 90% of our jobs in Baltimore are in the private sector. So building that bridge is critical. I know we have many workforce training programs going on in Baltimore, but they need to be more effective and they need to be very real to the people who need jobs and need good jobs and good living wage earnings. So I think building the relationships more strongly with the private sector, also with our nonprofit sector, because they're a huge employer in Baltimore. We know the importance of the anchor institutions in Baltimore that are hospitals and educational facilities, but there are many more. And so I think a strong connection with the nonprofit sector matters. And I talk a lot about the intergovernmental relationships here because Baltimore can't solve its problems alone. We have to have a very strong relationship with the state, particularly with some of the federal legislation that has passed where we need to work with the state to get dollars to Baltimore. That one is really important. I also think there are more federal programs that Baltimore could take advantage of. When I was in the Obama administration, we did a lot of work in Detroit after they filed for bankruptcy to help them connect to federal programs they were eligible for, but were simply not taking advantage of. So I think a strong intergovernmental relations seat in City Hall, frankly, in the mayor's office, would be critical to making sure Baltimore is getting every dollar it deserves and that it's being very intentional about what we're going after. So I would begin with an economic recovery task force that would incorporate all of these partners and make sure we're all at the table for a very fast-paced recovery plan that is going to keep Baltimore from slipping backwards. So those are the kinds of relationships that I think are really important now.
That's really great.